What's up, guys? This is Brian Mounts with turfmechanic.com. Today, I core aerated my lawn. And I want to tell you everything that you need to know about core aerating your lawn mechanically with one of those big gas-powered machines. Now, before we get too far into the video, I want you to know that manually core aerating your lawn is an option if you have a very small space. I would say that if you have a space that's 500 square feet or less, I would just grab a manual core aerator, do it yourself. It doesn't take that long if you're going to be doing it manually, but anything above 500 square feet, it's going to be really hard to go through a lot of area. I would estimate for 2,500 square feet, which is the size of my flat yard here, that it would take me approximately 15 hours to properly manually do it. That equates to about 3 hours for every 500 square feet. If it's gonna take you more than 3 hours, it might be worth it just going out to a tool rental place and renting a mechanical core aerator. That's what I had done for my yard. Now, I have small kids. They're run around all the time, not exactly when I'm recording a video, but if I'm going to be running a big mechanical core aerator, or you need to know that these things are heavy beasts. It's very difficult to actually move them around all by yourself. So for me, I ended up hiring a company, a local guy here in my town that I've used for a number of projects before, and I recommend a lot of you guys hire someone locally to do this as well. It doesn't cost too much more money than doing it yourself, and you don't have to physically do the labor. The reason I say that is this is really a two-person job. For one, even if you go rent the thing, you need a big truck or trailer to be able to put this machine in. It's bigger than a regular lawnmower. Most lawnmowers are smaller than these, and most lawnmowers are lighter than these. Being able to pick them up into a truck or a trailer and down, manhandle it around the yard, making turns, it's really helpful to have a second pair of hands available to help you pick these things up and move them around, pick them onto trailers and off and whatnot. I had my lawn mechanically core aerated back in March, and there was 2 people that came to do it, and they worked together as a team. I just had my lawn mechanically aerated earlier today, and it also took 2 people to do it. If you're gonna be doing this yourself and not hiring it out, make sure that you have a second pair of hands available to help you load these things onto and off of trucks and maneuver around corners, because when you use these machines in the middle of a yard in big wide open stretches, it's fine. The problem is when you go along fence lines that bend a little bit, or as you see, I've got a tree back behind me with a planter bed. I've got another tree over there. I've got lots of tight spaces that are very hard to move these things around. The standard way of core aerating your lawn with one of these mechanical machines is to just go in long passes. Now you're going to want to do a double pass, because proper core aeration requires approximately 24 holes per square foot. If you're only doing a single pass, you're not coming close to doing that. A double pass, you're still not usually getting up to that 24 cores per square foot, but it's an awful lot better than a single pass. Now, in an ideal world, you're going to be crisscrossing your paths. You're going to be going this way, and then you're going to be going this way. That way, you're not going to have quite the same pattern of lines. They're going to be a little bit more scattered and spread about. When you go to turn on one of these things, it's a lot like turning on a gas-powered lawnmower. A big gas-powered lawnmower, potentially a ride-on lawnmower. You've got a choke, you've got a throttle, you've also got a pull cord on most aerator machines that you're going to be using. They're on the bar. You've got a lever that goes up and down. When you press the lever down, it allows the tines to dig down into the ground and lift the rolling wheels off of the ground. When you get to the end of a row, when you want to turn the machine, you have to pull that bar back up so that the tines pull out of the ground. As they pull out of the ground, the whole machine drops down and sits on the wheels that you can then roll across the ground. These machines are able to just roll freely across the ground without the tines hitting the ground, but you have to be able to pick those tines up. Now the tines, once they're in the ground and you squeeze the engage bar, so whichever machine you've got, it's going to have its own bar or handle. For the machine that was used here in my yard, it's got 2 little motorcycle style handles. You squeeze those together and then the tines start moving. It's kind of like a self-propelled lawnmower. Thing is, it doesn't start slowly and ramp up. Once you push that thing, it just goes because the tines are directly in the ground. Because they're in the ground, it's instantly going to take off on you. You don't want to fight it. You have to be ready for it to move instantly right when you squeeze the trigger. Now, when you get to ends of rows, you have to let go of the self-propelled or the tine engage mechanism, and it will come to a stop. But those tines are still in the ground. So if you're going to be turning the machine, you can't just turn it because the tines are literally in the ground. You have to lift the tines off the ground before you turn. Now, most of these machines are going to have a very thick, wide wheel on the front that rolls, and then they're going to have two smaller wheels on the back, flanking the left and the right, exactly where the tines would be. Now, as you can imagine, you can tilt that thing back onto the back wheels and pivot the machine around, or you can lift the back of the machine up onto the front wheel and pivot off of the front wheel to make a turn. In some cases, depending on the topography of your land and what obstacles are close to you, you might need a second person literally to just turn the machine. Not to mention the fact that if your lawn is a little bit of a hill, or if you're on a small grade, it becomes even more difficult. Now, over here, I've got a hill back behind me, which I have not irrigated this year because we're in a drought. We did take the core aerator up a little bit up the hill. Now, the core aerator would continue going up the hill quite easily if we wanted it to, but it's harder to keep the thing under control because you're on a hill and the machine is so heavy. So if the machine wants to tilt and kind of turn sideways, it is very easy to lose control of the machine on a hill. So be very careful if you have a grade. Even this area that I'm sitting on right now is on a grade. This is the high side and this is the low side. So as you're running parallel to the grade, the weight of the machine comes down and then it leans this way. It still wants to go that way. So as you're going, the tines that are digging into the ground over here are digging in deeper than the ones over here because the weight of the machine is pushing that direction. The steeper the grade is, the more careful you have to be. Now, another thing to say is that you cannot run these machines right up against the edge of things. You just can't do it. The wheel is here and then the tines are on the inside. So as you're planning for your core aeration process, you have to understand that you're not going to be able to core aerate all the way up to a fence line or all the way up to a sidewalk. You're not going to be able to core aerate over paver stones or anywhere close to sprinkler heads that are in the ground. You're going to end up having strips and patches throughout your lawn that cannot be core aerated with the mechanical machine. You're going to have to go over those areas with a manual core aerator or just use liquid aeration products on those areas only. Now, here on my lawn, I do manual core aerate. In fact, here on the channel, I have an entire how-to guide on how to manually core aerate the lawn, but I also use liquid aeration products. The liquid aeration products work to soften the soil up. They don't relieve compaction, so to speak, like a core aerator, but they do soften the soil up. So that's an option for those edges if you don't want to take the manual route in those hard to reach spots. As you run the core aerator, it's important to flag and notate and make it very plainly obvious on the lawn where your sprinkler heads are, because if you accidentally hit one, you're going to either damage the machine or the sprinkler head, or both. You're certainly going to damage the sprinkler head. You're probably going to end up having to replace it. So if you mark those locations, it's a lot easier and safer to go around the areas and then manually core aerate around those sensitive areas with a yard butler style tool. Now, in terms of gas and oil, these things are going to be very similar to large push behind lawnmowers. They're going to use roughly the same amount of gas and oil. Not a lot is going to be different about that. In normal residential settings, you're only going to be using a core aerator once or twice a year. So it doesn't usually make financial sense to spend the money to buy your own, because on the low end, mechanical core aerators start somewhere around $1,500 and they can get quite pricey beyond that. If you're only using it twice a year, it just doesn't make sense. It makes far more sense to rent the machine. It makes much more sense to spend $1,000 on a really fancy lawnmower that you're going to be using once or twice a week over the course of a season. There is nothing wrong with hiring the job out to someone who does this regularly or renting it on your own. Now, if you're still planning your core aeration, there are a few things that you should be doing ahead of time. It's really important to water the lawn very deeply within a couple days of running the core aerator. I also like to spray liquid Aerate product on the lawn to soften the soil up, to make it a little bit easier for the tines to dig deeper into the ground and pull really good cores. It's also super important to fertilize the lawn a few days beforehand, because getting fertilizer onto the lawn and then doing your deep water session is going to push that fertilizer down into the root zone of the plant, so the plant will be able to uptake it and get it into the plant system before the damage is inflicted by the aeration process. Now, a core aerator is going to be pretty damaging in the short term to your grass. As you can see right here, my grass is looking pretty rough right now. I've cut it much shorter than normal because it makes it easier to core aerate, and that is a little bit of a stressor on the grass itself. I've also run a dethatcher over it to get as much surface debris off of my lawn before running the core aerator as well. All of these things are pretty rough on the grass. Now, if we can get that fertilizer down in there and then core aerate, especially as we're pushing into fall or early spring, depending on the time of year that you're doing this, we're going to be feeding the grass and getting some nutrition back into that grass so that it can recover quickly, especially as we go into a high growth phase of both leaf tissue and root tissue of our grass systems. That happens for cool season grasses in early to mid spring and early fall. Those are the prime times for grass root development and grass leaf tissue growth. Now, after core aerating, which is what you see here, I've already core aerated, or at least I had it hired out. After doing this, you have the option of leaving all the cores here on the lawn, running them over with your lawnmower, and just letting them slowly break down and reassimilate into the soil system. There is a good reason to do that. Most people will probably do that because they have longer grass than this, and you're not even really going to notice it after a week or so. But for me, what I do is I rake all of this up, and I take all of this material, because I've actually got little small thatch layers on top of every single core. This is one of the benefits for me of doing this, is it's a way to physically remove chunks of thatch. I can remove anywhere between 5 and 15% of my thatch layer in a single season by simply core aerating heavily or lightly once or twice a year. I want to get this off of the lawn because the thatch is very hard to break down once it gets too thick. Not only that, but I can take this material and use it as filler material for holes and many other lawn projects that I want to do around the property. Also, once I get it off the ground, I can then have a very clean surface with holes in the ground available to top dress my lawn with material that is hard to incorporate in the soil in any other circumstance. In the springtime, I top dress my lawn with peat moss and worm castings. Both the peat moss and the worm castings and a small top dusting of azomite went down onto the lawn, and I was able to push broom it across the lawn and assimilate a lot of it into the cores that had been pulled. That is a very important step in increasing the health of my lawn without really properly fertilizing it. It just makes the lawn healthier. Those materials do better when they are deep in the soil system in the root zone, and they're very hard to get there. This time of year, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be applying straight biochar on top of my lawn, and I'm still going to be push brooming it in, trying my best to get as much of it into the cores as possible. Biochar is going to be basically a nutrient holding tank and a water retention tank deep down in the soil. It's a little place for microorganisms, the beneficial stuff to live, and the water to get sucked into like a sponge and hold there, nutrients to hold there. It's going to decrease leaching through the soil. It's a really important product that goes down into the lawn, and most people don't do it. It's a step that most people don't take. In future videos here on the channel, I'm going to show you the biochar that I'm using, because I'm actually experimenting with 5 different biochars. So if you're curious about the biochars, I'm going to throw links down into the description below. Now, there are other videos here on this channel all about things that you do before aeration, things that you do after aeration, how to top dress, what to top dress with, how to fertilize before. This time of year, it's important to fertilize the lawn anyway, whether you're doing this or not. I have videos on that as well. Make sure to take a look in the description below, hit that like button while you're down there, and find some of those links to some of those other videos here on this channel that are applicable and interesting to you. I can't put all of them here on the screen, but I will put here on the screen right up there my follow-up video to this, where I'm going to be top dressing the lawn after aeration. Make sure to watch that, and I will see you in another video down the road. Have you ever done this on like crazy long grass?
No, it's all been good lawns that people take care of.
Yeah. People who don't care about their lawns don't do this. All right.